ready? All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Monday, June 16th, and it's the fourth Quality of Life Committee meeting for 2025. During today's meeting, we will consider two items regarding SNAP application assistance and a loan agreement with People's Housing Plus, receive quarterly homeless updates on a sustainability plan, and end with a presentation on the 2-year anniversary of the Mobile Crisis Intervention Unit in New Orleans. Just a reminder about public comments. Public comments are limited to 1 comment per person per item, and they are limited to 2 minutes. And before voting on any agenda items, council staff will read any online public comment received for the pending item. Anita, will you do roll call, please?
Sure. Roll call. Councilmember Harris.
Here.
Councilmember Giarrusso. Councilmember King. Councilmember Green.
Present.
Councilmember Thomas. We have 3 members. We have a quorum.
Great. Council members, I'd like to take some things out of order.
Let's vote on the minutes first before we...
All right. All right, Anita. Keep me in line.
While we have a quorum.
Okay.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Let's go to number 4. Anita, if you could read that.
Sure. This is a consideration for approval of contract between the city and Firehouse Avenue. I'm sorry, the People's Housing Plus for the redevelopment of the Louisiana Avenue Firehouse.
Do we have anyone from the city here to present? Come on up.
Good afternoon. My name is David Munier. I am an affordable housing project manager with the Office of Community Development. OCD is requesting the council approve House approval of a loan agreement and the associated accessory documents between the City of New Orleans and People's Housing Plus for gap financing the Louisiana Avenue Firehouse project. This loan will provide $600,000 of HUD Home Program CHODO set-aside funding, which will renovate and convert the second floor of the firehouse located at 2312 Louisiana Avenue into 7 affordable units. 4 of the units will be governed by the city's home regulatory agreement with a minimum affordability period of 35 years. The project is listed as permanently affordable, but that's not part of our contract.
Okay. Council members, any questions?
When you said set-aside funding, explain that, because the term set-aside could mean a lot of different things.
So the home program, which is a HUD funding source, requires that 15% of the funding each year goes to a CHODO eligible organization, which is a community housing development organization. There's certain restrictions on the organization's area that they work and the board makeup and also how exactly they function. So this would be a project that meets that requirement.
Okay, and the 600,000 does what?
I'm sorry?
600,000 specifically helps address those areas that you talked about?
Yes, correct. It's required. We have to use those home funds for that amount. It's basically meeting our obligation for a year.
What's the total cost of the project?
Total cost of the project is $4.7 million.
And how much of it is city funds?
It's just the 600,000.
Just the 600. Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Green, any questions?
Yes. Just for a second, because Councilmember Harris, there's been misinformation on this project that has been shared on multiple occasions, as if the city is putting up millions of dollars to make this happen. Yes, and I appreciate that. And Councilman Thomas, I'm just gonna go a little bit further. Could you just explain this project? And remember, it was a blighted former. It's just that someone continues to use misinformation, and the public is asked about it. We might as well clear the air.
Blighted city historic firehouse that was transferred to NORA for NORA to select a developer. People's Housing Plus was selected. and they are redeveloping the property into a Head Start program, I believe, on the first floor. I'm sorry, Early Childhood Education Center on the first floor, and the second floor is 7 affordable units. They ran into asbestos and the usual issues that you would have. The city is only providing $600,000 of home funding, which is a HUD funding source that is only to be used for affordable housing.
I know you know why I'm bringing it up. At the end of the day, a price per unit is not fair. And not only that, if you're going to analyze that only, but what about the value of the Head Start that's in it, and also the fact that it was a vacant, abandoned, blighted historical property in an area of revitalization? I kind of just wanted that to be on the record. That's all.
Understood.
Thank you, Councilmember Green, and you're not wrong because they also had to remediate much of the property as well. So,
Yes.
and buy a neighboring lot. Jonathan Leet.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Jonathan Light with Alembic Community Development. We are the development partner to People's Housing Plus on this development. So yes, to reiterate, this was a 10-plus-year-old blighted firehouse building owned by the city. The city put out an RFP for applicants. I believe there was one, perhaps two respondents. People's Housing Plus is one of them in partnership with our company. We developed a program to have an early childhood education facility on the ground floor and in the rear old horse stable building, along with 7 long-term affordable units for households earning below 60 and 80% AMI on the upstairs 2-bedroom apartments, along with 1 bedroom. I have no idea where the idea of millions of dollars from the city is coming from. That is complete misinformation. It is $150,000 per unit of affordable housing that the city's invested. That is consistent with how the city always allocates home and other entitlement money. All the other financing comes from non-city sources. We think this is a pretty fantastic example of how you utilize city, state, federal resources to bring back a blighted building in a way that's completely community serving. It's affordable rents, not only for the affordable housing piece, but for the early childhood education operator as well, who is a Central City former Central City long-term family black woman-owned business who's now going to be operating there, moving from the West Bank, by the way, because she was priced out of Orleans Parish and is now going to be operating EC in Orleans Parish. The last thing I'd say is also a great example of utilizing our residents. Our city passed a millage a couple years ago to support early childhood education operating seats, and so this is an example of one of the perhaps first or second facility that's going to make use of those construction funds for that. The city's funding solely going to construction dollars as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. This really can serve as the model for other redevelopment projects around the city, and I'm very excited about it. So with that, I'll move.
I'll be glad to second. My machine is not working again for some reason.
Okay, officially seconded by Councilmember Thomas.
Okay, that's
All
fine.
in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Let's go to item number 3, please.
This is also a contract for council approval. This is between the city Health Department and the Louisiana Department of Child and Family Services for SNAP application assistance.
All right, do we have someone from the city presenting? Dr. Vegno?
Thank you. We don't have an official presentation, but in short, this would allow us to assist DCFS in increasing SNAP applications. We know that really only about 2/3 of our residents who qualify for SNAP, and that's of course food assistance, get it. And so in order to combat food insecurity and hunger, which has so many negative effects on health, we want to do everything we can to increase the capacity to get people enrolled. So this is simply an agreement to allow us to work with them on that.
Great. Any questions? All right, I'll move. Seconded by Councilmember Thomas. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you. Anita, let's go to the 5th item.
We have reducing street homelessness updates. Presenters, we have Mandy Chapman-Semple, Managing Partner at Clutch Consulting.
Great, thank you. For this quarterly homelessness update, Mandy is going to present. She's the Managing Partner at Clutch Consulting. While we're getting the presentation ready, I want to set the stage. Today marks an important milestone in our city's response to homelessness. Since launching the Home for Good program, we've housed over 1,000 individuals, closed 8 encampments, and dramatically reduced the number of emergency calls related to street homelessness. That did not happen by accident. It happened because we chose to lead with housing, dignity, and compassion, and it is working. I'm excited to unveil the Home for Good Sustainability Plan, which you will all hear about shortly. It's a 10-year roadmap to make street homelessness in New Orleans rare, brief, and non-reoccurring. During the presentation, you'll hear about the acceleration of housing placements, the deployment of rapid outreach, permanent infrastructure being built, and a strengthening of the overall coordination across all partners, including our private partners and nonprofits in this effort. I want to give a heartfelt thanks to every organization, advocate, service provider, and peer support worker who made this progress possible. Whether you've been on the front lines during street outreach, managing shelter beds, or pushing public policy forward, this moment belongs to you. I also want to take a moment to celebrate a major victory for the state legislative session. Thanks to your advocacy, the anti-homelessness bills that would have criminalized people for simply being unhoused or would have created a private right of action against cities for not immediately closing encampments failed. With this sustainability plan, we are not reacting. We are planning, we are investing, and we are building a New Orleans where no one has to sleep on the streets, and we will move this forward together. With that, Mandy, will you go ahead and present the plan?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, council members, to be here today. You're getting a combined update, both on the exact progress that we've been making, that we've been reporting on quarter by quarter, but we'll spend the bulk of our presentation today digging a little deeper into the sustainability planning process. We recognized when we launched this initiative that it was going to take 2 phases. The first was going to begin immediately responding and reacting to what was on the streets in front of us and what our system and our partners needed to coalesce around a larger sustainable plan. And so the second phase of the plan has been underway for some time in its planning phase. And today we're excited to unveil the results of that planning and activate a more formal process within the community where we really begin deep implementation to sustain all of the gains that have been made to date. So let me first start with the initiative progress overview. We'll get into the sustainability plan, and then we'll close today in being very explicit about what we're going to do in Q3 and beyond in order to move this sustainability plan forward. First, I want to acknowledge where we started this process. Again, as the council member acknowledged, this didn't happen by accident, and we need to recognize the incredible leadership that started in 2022 through Unity's effort to create the Community Task Force to Reduce Street Homelessness, chaired by Bill Hines and the retired Judge Calvin Johnson. This was really the launch of a vision to think about changing the way homelessness was experienced in this community, and in particular, helping individuals move off the streets and get the relief and the remedy that they need immediately. It was as a result of this planning process that the city was able to really understand the importance of their leadership and the necessity to activate a more concrete and direct role for the city in this process. So at the beginning of 2023, the new Office of Homeless Services and Strategies was created, and a director was named for this office, joining the mayor's team. As a result of the Community Task Force work, in about Q2 of 2023, Unity received notification that this community had been awarded additional special HUD funding to house 420 unsheltered individuals. This was an incredible opportunity then for the city to fully leverage those additional resources and coalesce the community to bring the Unity-controlled HUD dollars into alignment with the investment, the new investments that the city was going to make. And the result was a plan that was presented to this very committee at the very end of, or at the beginning of Q4 in 2024, where we identified not just what the community task force had intended to do, the 420 individuals, but rather with the alignment of city resources and the anticipation of future resources from the city and state in subsequent years, the aim was to house an additional 1,500 people, doing some very targeted work to remove individuals from encampments, to target individuals sleeping outside, and to activate our shelter system so that no individuals had to sleep outside going forward, that the shelter could really adequately serve. And that was the vision that was provided at that time. And so Home for Good New Orleans was born. The Phase 1 initiative was to house and stabilize 1,500 individuals experiencing homelessness across the city by the end of 2025. We activated 3 pathways. The most immediate pathway was to target inner core encampments that had been designated a public health concern, and to do so by engaging every one of these individuals in the encampments and then moving them to housing, and then working with partners to close those locations so no new individuals would come and sleep in those environments. Instead, we wanted to redirect those individuals into shelter where they could be serviced more adequately. This then allowed the team to go to the next encampment and the next encampment, and the vision was to eventually rehouse everyone who was experiencing unsheltered homelessness within the inner core. At the same time, Unity, through its work, had activated a pathway through its outreach and housing navigation activities to engage all sorts of individuals who were living unsheltered, whether they were in a formal encampment within the inner core or not. And so at the same time, Unity was continuing to identify the most vulnerable individuals who had been sleeping outside for a long time, and to bring them into housing through this initiative. And equally, we started to contemplate how to move more individuals through the shelter process. The first step in that process was really improving and shoring up the operations of the low barrier shelter, and then bringing the rest of the shelter providers into a planning process so we could understand how we could make the improvements that were necessary to move more people through those shelter beds. And so we knew that we wouldn't activate a massive acceleration of shelter right away, but we had a vision that by the time we entered 2025, we would be putting our foot on the gas pedal and really starting to move a tremendous number of individuals through shelter, which I'm proud to say we've been able to accomplish. So the progress as of the end of May across these pathways and against this first phase of the initiative is that we're at about 75.5% of our goal. So we've rehoused as of the end of May 1,133 individuals from across these pathways. You can see that the work in each of these pathways continues, but we've really accelerated the movement from shelter, which is opening up new shelter beds, so allowing us to encourage individuals off the streets and into use of those beds. The key to maintaining this is that we have to keep resourcing those shelter beds so that they can help individuals move out of them. Just creating more shelter beds actually does the opposite. And this has been a really powerful lesson throughout the first phase of this initiative. So the link between accelerating exits from shelter and closure maintenance is one that we've really solidified. The fastest and most financially efficient way to maintain closure within our inner core is to continuously rehouse individuals from shelter so that we're opening up beds on a very regular basis. It's actually much more cost efficient to use the beds that we have and to serve double or triple the number of people in a year in those beds than it is to build new shelter beds themselves. And the reason for that is that those shelter beds become clogged if we don't have the exit interventions available. So what we've been practicing since the beginning of 2025 is an exercise where we used city allocated resources for rapid rehousing to target individuals who had been in shelter for over a year. And we helped move those individuals out and into housing with the supportive services they need to stabilize and recover. That opened up the beds that we needed to move new individuals off the streets into those beds. But we made sure those beds also had a rehousing intervention attached to them. So now those new individuals, we're moving those individuals out and opening up those beds again. And that's the process that we anticipate will be necessary in order to sustain this work going forward. And enforcement and closure maintenance is all rooted in the idea that there is a place where an individual can go. And so we have to make that bed available on a continuous basis. And our responsibility for the second part of this process was to think about what's the smartest and most responsible investment to make that happen. And so we hope that through the experiences in this first phase, we can find partnership from the state, and that the infusion of additional state resources accompanied with the continued investment of city resources will allow us to sustain this pattern and eventually completely eliminate sleeping in the inner core, which we're ready to do very soon. So that brings us to the importance of the sustainability planning process. It's not enough just to set a goal to rehouse a certain number of people. We want to actually create a permanent change in the way we respond to homelessness. And so we started a process all the way back at the same time when we were launching this initiative, where we were going to begin to think about sustainability. We weren't going to wait until we reached our 1,500 goal, but rather we were going to anticipate that we would meet that goal and that we would want to sustain those gains. It was really important that we brought our provider partners to the table to help shape this process. So as you can see, there were a variety of provider work sessions that included all sorts of partners. Those partners, we had very consistent participation in these planning sessions from a handful of core providers, and then other providers who provide kind of peripheral services would come to targeted sessions and participate. And within the sustainability plan, there's a full list of all of the individuals who participated in that process. So as you can see, all throughout 2024, we were really thinking about what we needed to do in terms of redesigning the system, what were the practice changes that were required. And then in the summer, last summer, we also performed a very detailed system analysis with whatever data was available to us. And what we needed to do was get our arms around what's the total number of people experiencing homelessness each year in New Orleans. In particular, we're focused on single adult population. So what's the total number, and what do we have to do to build a response system that can provide immediate relief and remedy to every one of those individuals? And how do we do it in the most cost-effective way, because resources ultimately are scarce. And so that exercise was infused into this planning process to help us shape the ultimate product that you're seeing in the plan today. So the emerging system priorities to achieve and sustain low to no unsheltered homelessness for single adults in New Orleans includes 4 large categories of activities. The first is that we want to stop and prevent street sleeping across the city. Obviously, our first phase is to do that within the inner core, but the expectation is we can accomplish that across the city over time as we build our optimized system. The second is that we want to achieve effective shelter flow. It's not about the number of shelter beds, it's about how many people we can move through those beds in any given year to meet the demand. And what our analysis has concluded is that we have enough beds. We just need to activate the exit intervention so we can move people through those beds. People are getting stuck, and we can fix that. The third is that we really need to focus on stabilization and recovery. And I think this has been a long concern of our entire community and our provider community throughout this process. We know that affordability is a real factor that's driving homelessness. We know that affordability is a factor that threatens stabilization and recovery. And so we need to equally focus this system on the case management services that we provide, on the housing stabilization services that we provide, and on our connections to the higher levels of care that are going to be required to help individuals be successful. And finally, within the plan, you'll see a variety of operational, funding, and policy improvements that need to take place over the next few years in order to fully maximize the existing resources, kind of fully coalesce everyone's efforts to achieve the optimized system that we hope for. So let me give you a summary here, an overview of some of the details that you'll see in the plan. So the first is that we need to end street sleeping in the inner core for good. We want to close the remaining encampments, of which we have identified 3 major encampments, and one is already underway. OHSS is working to establish rapid response street outreach teams that will be multidisciplinary teams that will be positioned then to respond within the inner core to any individual who's experiencing homelessness and experiencing a crisis, with the goal of getting them into the care that they need and off the streets. And finally, we're activating closure maintenance protocols in partnership with our space managers, our first responders, and our private property owners. What we learned in our first phase is that this takes a village, and that everyone in this community really desires the same thing, that no individual is left to sleep outside, that no neighborhood is left to try to care for individuals sleeping outside. And so by coming together through our closure maintenance partnerships, we can develop protocols that ensure that when an individual experiences homelessness in front of us, we have a way to respond immediately and bring that individual into care. And I'm so excited to say that the first major meeting to begin planning for the closure of the inner core is taking place tomorrow morning. So this is how close and how serious we are about moving in this direction. The second piece of this puzzle is that we have to optimize shelter flow to prevent future unsheltered homelessness. I hope the graphics help represent that we can build shelter beds and we can move individuals into those shelter beds. But if we have not equally invested in a way for individuals to move out of those beds, these environments simply clog. And individuals, languish in homelessness. And the longer individuals languish, the more expensive it is to provide that intervention, the more their health deteriorates, and the more complex their needs become. And so the most cost-efficient way forward through our analysis is to simply invest in an adequate number of intervention solutions and to attach those intervention solutions to the shelter environments so that the minute the individual hits the shelter bed, we know the exact pathway and we are activating that pathway for that individual. And what you'll see in the next slide is not only do we understand this, but we understand the types of interventions that the individuals will need as they enter homelessness each year going forward. One of the most kind of important recognitions that came from this analysis is that because we didn't have an adequate investment in the rehousing solutions or the exit interventions for individuals, and folks were staying in our emergency shelter beds for more than a year, it was actually costing us more to keep that individual in a shelter bed than it would to provide them with the permanent supportive housing that they needed to stabilize and recover. So in some ways, inadvertently, we were holding people or have been holding people in crisis and where they've been getting worse, not better, and that the fastest way to resolve this is to create this optimized system. So the system modeling exercise that we pursued allowed us to kind of fully analyze the number of individuals who were coming into homelessness each year. And I want to just draw our attention that this is focused on single adults because that is the primary driver of unsheltered homelessness in this community. So what the analysis concluded is that about 4,300 individuals, single adult individuals, will experience homelessness on an annual basis in this community, which means if we want to sustain an end to unsheltered homelessness, if we want no one sleeping outside, we have to optimize the flow of our system to fully respond to all 4,300 of these individuals each and every year. Doing so means no one gets stuck and no one becomes a long stayer in our system, no one's sleeping in an emergency shelter bed for more than a year. So what you'll see in this graphic is that through this analysis, we were able to determine that about 80% of new entrants into homelessness each year just need a relatively light intervention. But we haven't had those interventions fully organized and available to those individuals, and they're staying in shelter much longer than they actually need to, which is contributing to the lack of available shelter beds for other newcomers to the system. We do want to recognize that on an annual basis, about 20% of the individuals will need more intensive interventions. So that includes a housing subsidy, oftentimes for at least 12 months and sometimes longer, and robust stabilization services so that they can connect to the care that they need. We also recognize that there's a small percentage, about 3% of individuals, that ultimately need higher levels of care, and I'll address that later in this presentation, and it's addressed fully in the plan. What you can also see is that this optimized system is all about creating a response system that ensures homelessness is brief for every individual and ideally non-recurring. So built into this model are performance expectations. We want 0 individuals experiencing homelessness for a year or longer. We want the average time from entry into our system to exit into our system to be 68 days or less. And we want fewer than 15% of the individuals to return to homelessness after 12 months being out of our homeless response system. So this really provides a great framework for what we want to achieve within an optimized system. So like, any optimized system can only be optimized if it's adequately resourced. So not only did we determine what the system needed to look like, how we needed to design and organize that system, but we also were, through the financial modeling exercise, able to determine the annual gap that's required. So what is, I think what is real about homelessness in the country today is that we've relied primarily on federal resources to provide the base of our homeless response for a long time. And those resources have largely been targeted to identifying those long stayers, those most vulnerable individuals, and to helping move those individuals out of our system. Because for so long, we haven't had the ability to meet that annual demand, and people have been getting stuck. And that has been true in New Orleans as well. And you have done an exceptional job of fully maximizing the availability of those federal resources. So much so that nearly 2/3 of your federal resources, not just federal, but nearly 2/3 of your resources that are used for homeless response in this community, 2/3 of that current funding are used to keep over 1,800 individuals with very serious disabling conditions in housing and stable, which doesn't necessarily leave very much additional resource for the new individuals that are coming into your system each year. And New Orleans, like so many communities, is having to bear the weight of the reality that those federal resources just aren't keeping up with that demand. So as we were contemplating this exercise, it became really important to appreciate that if the local community was going to need to invest its resources on an annual basis in order to build its optimized system, what was the absolute most efficient use of those dollars? What was the smartest investment? And as you can see from this chart, what we determined is there is an annual gap of about $25 million that's needed across several categories in order to ensure that we maintain adequate shelter flow so that no one sleeps outside. And in doing so, it really empowers this community to draw that line, that clear boundary to say, we're going to move folks off the streets and into shelter because we have that available and we have the exit pathway for those individuals. Finally, what makes us know that this is the most cost-effective solution is that when you look at the yearly costs to house an individual through the first phase of our Home for Good initiative, keeping in mind we're targeting some of the most vulnerable individuals who have been stuck in our homeless response system for years, it was costing roughly about $22,000 per individual. And when we contrast that to what it would cost to jail someone in this community, which is about $51,000 per year, or to provide emergency room services, it costs about $55,000 per year for these vulnerable individuals. And so we understood that by allowing investments that support immediate remedy and the avoidance of the use of those critical and important services in this community, this was going to be the most cost-effective way forward. One of the critical operational recommendations within the plan is to establish a central command structure to lead and manage the rapid response system. So since 2023, when we launched the first phase of this plan, the Office of Homeless Services and Strategies has been using emergency management techniques to organize a coordinated response to decommission encampments within the inner core using a direct-to-housing model. What these emergency management techniques allowed us to do is bring together the city's efforts, bring those into alignment with the rehousing coordination activities that Unity has always supported. And as we brought those things into alignment with the city's resources and staffing, that is how we've been able to see such incredible targeted progress. It also helped identify everyone's strengths and defined clear roles and lanes where everyone could maximize their contribution in this process. So through the process, we've been able to consolidate practices, create more efficiency, and empower partners to focus and amplify based on their strengths. As a result, I think the city is in deeper partnership now with Unity, United Way, public health, and the private sector. And I think the meeting tomorrow is a testament of how we can bring the entire village together to meet everyone's needs and expectations and to really meet this moment. As a result of that experience, this plan recognizes the importance of this central command structure. And it happens to be a structure that is able to provide a clear chain of command, accountability, and coordination, ensuring that all funding sources, services, and agencies work towards shared goals. This is all built on an emergency management framework, and this central command model has been adopted by HUD as a really effective way to tackle this issue with urgency and with a clear structure of coordination. We know that a cohesive and structured leadership approach will eliminate funding silos, improve coordination, and ensures that local, state, and federal resources work together, which I think has been something that has been a concern for everyone in this community. So it is critical if we want to optimize the system that we decide in this community to come together under a central command structure so that we can continue kind of this very specific way of organizing leadership, operations, planning, logistics, finance, and administration, and continue to make the improvements that would be required within this community to achieve that optimized system. Central command really works because it builds on that emergency management framework. So this is about funding alignment and shared performance metrics. I think one of the things that can be most challenging in any community is that different funders may require different performance expectations, and then it creates a huge amount of confusion when we're reporting on performance in one way to one funder and one way to another funder. And one of the things we've tried to practice with the Home for Good approach is to have a single dashboard to present data in a clear way, to be accountable in a very simple way to the community and to you as council for particular progress. And the way that was accomplished is not just because we hoped for it, but because we came together and actively managed and supported our partners to perform each and every day. Finally, what we've learned in this process is there's a tremendous amount of burden placed on each one of our individual providers. And so we need to work to reduce those administrative burdens so that our providers are better positioned just to focus on the delivery of the service. They're the experts in that service delivery, but we're oftentimes saddling them with a tremendous amount of administrative responsibility just to manage the funds that we're giving them to perform. And so we're finding new ways through the central command structure to think about consolidating those administrative tasks. We've come into partnership recently with United Way to do centralized rent administration, alleviating our partners from the financial burden of cutting those checks so that they can focus on the delivery of service and getting more and more individuals into housing. And I think this is just a testament to why central command can be such an effective model. It can see all of the needs and then make very strategic decisions about how to meet those needs collectively rather than in a one-off basis. One of the most kind of largest topics of conversation throughout this planning process was the reality that there is an affordability crisis in this community and in this country. and that affordability crisis is accelerating the number of individuals experiencing homelessness, and equally making it more difficult to help intervene to move individuals out of homelessness. With that understanding in mind, we created the optimized system. And one of the things that the optimized system that we've presented to you relies on is our ability to bridge the gap, that we are going to have to subsidize that return to housing until affordability is addressed. And that there's simply too much risk to wait for that affordability to be fixed before we respond to the homelessness that's in front of us. We know the public health consequence of that for individuals and for this community. So this plan really finds the middle ground where it basically organizes resources to invest in those subsidies and activate system-wide structures that go and engage the landlord community, identify units, work in partnership within that community, and help move individuals very rapidly into housing. I'm so excited to say that the rehousing capacity of this system has ballooned over the last 2 years. And we are talking about housing multiple individuals in a day, whereas it used to, take multiple weeks to house an individual. And so that's the difference of the system today as compared to what it used to be. And that is as a result of going ahead and leaning in to the market that's in front of us, buying our way into that market, helping individuals stabilize, using all of our assets, and then working on the affordability through other mechanisms like the Housing Trust Fund. Finally, it's really important to acknowledge, as I stated previously, that there are a small number of individuals who are in need of higher levels of care far beyond what the homeless response system and its providers are capable of providing, and in some ways are not able to provide to individuals. And this creates a real strain on our provider community, but it also is the representation of homelessness that all of us are seeing. These are our most complex cases, and it can feel quite overwhelming on the streets when we encounter an individual that is in such severe crisis and have so much need. Knowing that the homeless response system is not equipped to be the care environment for these individuals, we use this process to identify what is needed and who is the partner, right, that is capable of activating the pathways to these resources. And what we concluded is that oftentimes about 3% of the individuals that are experiencing homelessness are in need of medical respite, which might be temporary or short-term recovery environments, but this is not an emergency shelter. These are environments where individuals are able to receive the health care that's required for them to recover. Perhaps not hospitalization, but certainly, they need assistance. The second is some individuals, at least for some period of time, may need institutional or rehabilitative care. So these are licensed healthcare environments where individuals are getting the care that they need. They're intensive and they're structured for treatment, and that's not the homeless response system. And then finally, we're recognizing that there's a small number of individuals who just simply need permanent assisted living environments. So this is beyond permanent supportive housing. These individuals need help performing their daily living functions, and we need environments that can support that adequately. And so the conclusion of this planning process is that a more formal healthcare partnership working group needed to be established, because it's not that these care environments don't exist. It's just that it can be very difficult for vulnerable individuals to access these care environments. And we needed to create a process by which we can create specialized care plans through our complex needs team for these individuals, and we can create more accessible pathways for these small number of individuals who need these higher levels of care. So I'm really excited to say this work group is underway with the help of the Public Health Department, and the complex needs team is already working cases. And this is an important part of the larger inner core closure strategy and of our closure maintenance activity. We're going to have a handful of folks who need higher levels of care, and we're going to make sure they get them. So finally, within the plan, there are additional details that provide a 10-year action plan to deliver and sustain an optimized rapid response system. That includes an action plan for 2025 to stop and prevent street sleeping, so a lot more detail about much of what I have described today. It includes a plan over the next couple of years, 25 and 26, for the structural adjustments that are needed to strengthen operations and ensure timely service delivery. And then it really identifies from 2026 through 2034 all of the continuous quality improvement activities that need to be tended to in order to move toward this optimized system. Obviously, the sustainability planning process and the system modeling analysis are providing the framework or the roadmap for how to build the optimized system. And some of the most important next steps are going to be securing the additional sustainable annual revenue that's needed in order to reach that fully optimized system. So the sustainability plan is being published on the Home for Good website and on the city's Office of Homeless Services and Strategies website. And I'm sure the partner organizations can link to those two websites as well. And so that should be live today for everyone to go and review. And we're excited for the next steps that come in partnership with our providers. Like I said, the plan provides a roadmap. What will come next is the activation, right, the continued activation of a central command structure where everyone comes together and works to define implementation activities. They function in work groups, they function in implementation groups so that we can continue to move everything forward. Some of the most immediate activities will be the activation of our closure maintenance team so that we can close the inner core in partnership. We're going to continue to accelerate exits from shelter, and we're really excited to start introducing those immediate, rapid exit solutions, those early one-time interventions so that folks aren't sitting in shelter beds any longer. That's going to be tested here in the next quarter. And then OHSS has been working to position its new FTEs so that we can create these rapid response street outreach teams and these multidisciplinary teams that will be assigned to be responsive around the inner core closure and responsive to all other concerns throughout the city so that we can continue to move folks off the streets and work toward this sustainability. The last thing that I will offer is that we continue to seek the resources to finish the job. And we're excited that the state has been at the table and we've been having more active conversations about accelerating exits from shelter and opening up additional capacity within the shelter so that we can move more individuals. And we really think this is the key to continuing this process going forward. And we're hopeful that the state will identify additional resources so that we can sustain our progress in 2025, meet our goal of 1,500, and then just continue to push forward into 2026 as we activate the sustainability plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Thomas.
Ooh, that was a lot. It was good, though. Thank you. You ended with one of the questions I was going to start with, so I'm going to try to bounce around with my notes. One of the comments I had was a partnership with the state for Everyday Bowl, not just Super Bowl. So explain to me, the state, if they're at the table, they were at the table, actually wanting to control the table on a lot of issues during the Super Bowl, but what type of partner are they on this issues for Everyday Bowl?
It's a great question, and through the sustainability planning process, our task was to identify the what and to provide, thank you, to provide an opportunity to then use the what to build the partnership that we're really looking for. So certainly we've been talking with the state throughout the sustainability planning process. I think that with the major events that took place, there was some, a very kind of targeted effort on the part of the state to manage during that period of time. I think that experience has also helped open up an opportunity for the state and the city to begin really active conversations about how to come together as a result of this plan. And so I can't provide you with any kind of specifics, but we're certainly excited that the state has indicated they will be participating in our meeting tomorrow morning. So fingers crossed that continues to be true. And so we're going to start by taking steps together around closure of the inner core, and we hope that what follows is a major investment of additional resources.
That was very diplomatic.
Well, yeah, well, I think resources are going to be important. You said a few words over and over again. Optimize, sustainability, and resources. You know, when you study the history of government and local governments, especially over the last 60 years, in many cases, government has grown. I'll give you an example. We had a $500 million budget with 503,000 people prior to Katrina. Now we have 361,000 people and a $1.8 billion budget. And it seems to be, but with delivery of services don't match what they were able to do with less money, with more people in the 80s, 90s, and in 2005. Just a fact. So it seems to me like we're always talking about increasing or creating, and then you said something about, I'm just trying to go to my notes. It said to create another command structure. Well, we keep creating structures, but the delivery of services and resources to, I see some experts out there, people like Ed and Paul and Renee, who, if they had more resources, they could do a whole lot more with what they had. But every time I'm here lately, there's an excuse to create another government entity when we have private entities that, if they had more resources, could deliver on their resources. So I'm not convinced on how we keep creating these jobs and these structures, but we have experts out there who do that. So when you say create another command structure, we already have command structures, or people who are in command of structures that do this. What do you mean?
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to clarify. So we're not proposing a new department. We're not proposing, a new staffing. What we're saying is, functionally, the role that OHSS has played in helping to organize and coalesce all of the partners so that everyone's efforts, all of those individual providers who do good work, and how do we give them more resource and make sure that each of those providers are working in lockstep so that we're fully maximizing those resources. And that's really what the central command structure is all about, is making sure that we are doing more than just handing out dollars. We're handing out dollars and supporting those providers in real time. We're making sure that everyone's activities are in alignment so that we can get the absolute maximum result from that investment.
Okay, so then let me ask this question then. So who's creating that command structure? Is it the people who do the work already?
Yeah, so let me very practically give you an example of how it works today. So in order to implement the targeted decommissioning structure, the city and Unity worked in partnership to fund a whole bunch of different partners and providers. And then we needed to create a structure, and by structure I mean a meeting, where those partners come together, and the city and Unity worked together to organize all of those activities and to support those individuals. So what that meant is we were looking at the totality of individuals that we were trying.
You said the city and Unity in the same sentence.
I did, and there is a good working partnership there. Each has their strengths, and that's what we've been able to identify in this process. The city has a lot of command. They have the ability to organize city resources and city partners and private partners, and Unity has structures in place that organize the delivery of the rehousing services. And so we needed to bring those two things together to create accountability.
Yeah, I was being a little facetious. I understand the city and Unity are two different entities, but what we haven't had is the city and Unity. Unity in general, unity of purpose, right? Unity amongst the different issues where we're weak. You remember the Legacy Project? Did you research it back in the late early 90s to deal with homeless, or where they were looking at the Orlando model and following these different models where you do holistic care and everybody would be at the table? And the theme was the same then. Comments, task force to reduce homelessness. optimize homeless agencies and resources. And then the other thing with the Legacy Project, that was a long time ago, the other word was creating a sustainable environment. Why didn't it work then?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the distinction here is that they didn't have the data to actually create a model to tell you very specifically what's the number of people, what are the pathways, what are the performance targets, and how do we actually manage a system to that end. So they had the structure, the right structure in mind. They just didn't have command over the data that was going to allow them to pull it all together. And ultimately, oftentimes, why many of those plans that you're describing failed is that they weren't adequately resourced. So when the resources aren't brought to bear, you can't execute the plan to, as presented.
Yeah, I could kind of go on with this a minute, but I got to get this stuff out the way. The other term you used was optimized shelter flow. So I wrote some things, maybe you can help me.
Okay.
Shelter flow, when you talk about homelessness, there's different categories, different reasons. Some people can go from addiction to sober to employment, stabilization, and housing. Then in another categories, I think about people, friends, family members, and studying the business, domestic violence, unemployment, bad luck, poverty, to economic stabilization, then to housing. But the formula or the flow would be different for someone who's experienced addiction versus economic bad luck versus domestic violence. So in just those three categories, or mental health is another one. So how do you optimize flow in those areas when really they're three different things for three different individuals?
Yeah, that's a great question. So
I'm full of great questions.
you are full of great questions. Okay.
But I learned from some of the people that's out there now.
Yeah. So if we go, I don't know if you can see, if we go back to the slide, what we understand about individuals with all of the characteristics that you've described is that all of these individuals need a pathway back to housing. And the question really comes down to what's the intensity of support that they need in order to get there. The other thing we know is that many of these individuals will do much better in working through some of those longer, complex issues in housing than they will in this crisis environment. So all of our recent evidence suggests that if we help individuals get back to housing and then support them to stabilize within that housing environment. So we're going to help you get back to housing, and then we're going to help you build your employment capacity, or help you grow your income so that you can sustain from that place forward. That's actually a more cost-effective approach for us than to leave someone inside a shelter bed unnecessarily for too long, where they're experiencing crisis and trauma. And so it allows us to provide that tailored support to individuals based on their pathway, but with an understanding that we know about 10% of the individuals who come and knock at the front door of our homeless response system, of our shelter system, we can help them immediately return back to their family or friends or wherever they came from. They might need some mediation, they might need a little bit of problem-solving support, but we can help get that done. For another 35%, we can help them, they may need to come into shelter for a few nights, but we can help them work a process to get back to safe housing as quickly as possible and on their path. We can connect them to employment supports, we can connect them to whatever that looks like. Other folks are going to need a deeper one-time financial assistance. We might need first month's rent and deposit to help them get on their feet. And then others, so individuals who have more complex needs, they're going to need us to help them move into housing and then fully stabilize within that housing. Connect to treatment, connect to recovery programs, whatever that looks like.
Two quick things. I got more, but I'm gonna let it go. We'll talk about it at some point. In 1960, the city had 620,000 people. We have 361,000 now. We're short 259,000 people. So we have space, right? So have we taken a look at space per capita versus land, opportunity, and housing stock, and where people will fit, especially when you talk about programs and affordability? I'm always amazed at how a city that had 620,000 people, we have 361, so we're short 259,000. So it sounds like we got space for people.
Yeah. So when we're talking about homelessness that's in front of us, if we want to resolve that homelessness, we have to use what's available, the stock that's available to us today. And we have,
And that's my point.
yeah, and we have been
What's the
working.
stock?
So we aren't looking at the housing stock. We work within the rental market. So we're like, what rental units are available and how do we help individuals move into that? There are separate plans that are looking at how do we expand the number of housing units that exist within this city, or rehabilitate or activate existing rehousing units. But that's separate and distinct from
I'm
this
going
plan.
somewhere. Yeah, so what will it take to take a look at a city that supported 620,000 people, and we have a shortage for a few thousand homeless people, and a problem with affordable housing? What type of study or formula or calculation would you need to come up with what's just most available, with short time and then long term in terms of dealing with the sustainability point that you kept making? What do we need to do there?
Yeah, I would say this is a partnership with OCD
Okay.
to look more deeply.
Okay.
And you know, there are good examples of studies out there, and I think you've done those studies that articulate the way forward. And I think the Housing Trust Fund was built up from one of those studies that helped to define, right, exactly how you move forward. So I think these two things work together, but the sustainability plan is about, we have to respond to what's in front of us until affordability can be different in this community.
And then this is my last point, so I don't belabor this. And thank you for your presentations, council members, as always, on this issue. But if we're going to deal with addiction and some of the issues that surround that, let me say that from Loyola to the low barrier shelter, there's more drug sales and more addiction issues and more chronic issues happening in that 2-block area every day, all day. So if that area is supposed to be helping solve the problem, the drug sales and the trafficking and the stuff that's happening in that area is actually creating more of a problem.
Yeah.
So until we deal with those 2 or 3 blocks, it just stand out there. Just go sit in your car and it look like your park. Open drug sales, open use all day. Period. Right in front of everybody coming to work all day. If we can't fix that issue, for everyone that you help when you talk about optimizing and sustainability, we're creating 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more problems a day over there.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad you recognize that, and this is why.
Well, Stevie Wonder sees.
This is why it's so important that we activate the closure maintenance partnerships, because what we learned through our targeted encampment decommissioning is that as vulnerable individuals who are experiencing homelessness are just trying to survive, others who have, who are entrepreneurs, are taking advantage of those environments and creating real safety concerns. And so through our active decommissioning, we help to resolve some of those issues by working in partnership with NOPD. And this is why closure maintenance is so important, so that we can activate all of those partners. And so it's not just about closing the inner core to sleeping. So it truly is about moving vulnerable people off the streets so that there's no longer a marketplace, right, for some of those activities to persist. And NOPD and whomever can be responsive to what is ultimately criminal activity.
Well, 3 things are going to have to happen for you to be successful. And optimizing shelter flow, especially with the categories we talked about, are important. I don't know if we've ever had that. And sustainability. How do we create? We don't seem not to do things that are sustainable. It's like we've been the murder capital in 7 different areas, right? Goes down, goes back up. We don't create a sustainable economic and social environment for it to stay down. But the partnership with the state, because I don't know that the federal government, that's a whole nother planet. We need a passport to get to DC now. That's how far they are away from us. But if the state is that interested in New Orleans, and not just in taking over valuable resources, not just in special events, we have to have a serious partnership with them, right? With the agency, because you got experts in this room, right? You got people who've been doing this, they've dedicated their life to it, but they've never had federal partners and local partners to make it sustainable or to have that kind of flow. But I mean, I like the way you laid it out, but at some point we got to get to the word sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Committee Chair. I'm going to ask one question.
Sure, Councilmember Gray.
Okay, but then I do want to reserve the right to ask additional questions after the
You
comment.
always have the right to ask additional questions.
Just want to reserve it to be official. Look, I appreciate your presentation, and it was great. I do want to take an opportunity today to recognize Mr. Nathaniel Fields and also the Mobile Crisis Intervention Unit, the New Orleans Police Department, the Fire Department, the New Orleans Health Department, and I'm sorry if I miss anyone, for the outstanding work that was done relocating someone who was in dire straits and severe danger on the Lafitte Greenway recently. It took a lot of attention to that matter, but the gentleman who was there told Mr. Fields that he didn't want to be relocated into something stable. Mr. Fields did not accept that, and your team did not accept that. And because of that, a gentleman now who was in a dangerous situation with no running water, no electricity, with canisters of gasoline and also oxygen equipment inside a place where he burned outside of a wooden structure on a regular basis. He's in a much better situation now. And those are the things that don't get a lot of attention. So as I mentioned, all of those organizations were involved and showed up. And I just want to say to all of them, especially those who are in the front row, thank you for that intervention, which is among the many interventions that take place in our city that don't get recognized. So thank you.
And I would add an individualized intervention, which is what we're talking about, is problem solving and making sure that people's individual needs are addressed so that they can get home, or they can get to family members who can take care of them, or they can get the treatment that they need.
Yes, and let me mention also the Lafitte Greenway Partnership, because they were sincere and also interested in it. But it was the city to the public that did a good job with him. But I see it on many occasions. There was someone who was sleeping in his car at the corner of Drew and Louisa Street in Gentilly Woods for a while, was very hostile. But the members of the New Orleans Police Department were very, very attentive to his needs, were very patient, and were able to put someone who was inclined to violence in a more stable situation. But again, the Office of Homeless Services and Strategies and Health were involved with that. I just wanted to mention that. That was actually not my question. My question is a little bit on what Councilman Thomas was saying, but I want to state my question in the form of a statement. The state of Louisiana cannot ignore the specialties or the peculiarities or the uniqueness relative to the situation that we have in New Orleans. We have good weather, we have lots of events, we have a family atmosphere, we have a supportive atmosphere with our churches, our community organizations. So many people who are unhoused here living on the streets come from other cities. I think that we would agree. I don't think anybody would agree with that. I'm not saying it's all of them, but the state can't ignore the fact that if there are no other resources in many other places close, that they're going to come to New Orleans because we provide those services. So I think that we've been very polite and we've been very diplomatic relative to our ask. But our ask is for the state to take on its responsibilities and help with the city. The encampments that have been closed, whether it be decommissioned is the right word, whether it be on Claiborne Avenue, whether it be at Earhart, whether it be at Chapatula Street, and now there's an existing encampment under the Carrollton Interchange. Everyone in this room, that's all state property. Shepherdton Highway is state property. They can't ignore the facts. What I regret is that they ignore the facts and then blame the city as if we aren't doing anything. Your presentation shows that the city of New Orleans is involved with many various departments. The state needs to step up and recognize that we need the resources. They have a moral responsibility to help the city of New Orleans because we are doing certain things. The transition center, for which $17 million was spent, over $100,000 per person for 3 months, was something that was done in an irresponsible manner. But it also shows the difficulties and the challenges that exist in that area. The city has shown compassion and continues to do great work in certain areas that are very, very difficult, especially because we have motivated individuals. I just want to ask you in the meeting that you have tomorrow with OCD and in future meetings to impart upon the state of Louisiana that they cannot continue to blame the city of New Orleans for a difficult situation when we are accomplishing and then refuse to participate on the level where we need them. That $17 million for that transition center, Home for Good could have had people in housing for a very long period of time, not just 3 months. The 55 persons who left that location and were sent back into the streets without any communications with them, the city would have never done something along those lines. So I know it's a difficult issue. I wanted to mention that. I'll reserve any other comments to after the comment cards are in. But I know that you're having a meeting tomorrow. It needs to be impressed upon everyone, especially on a larger level, that the city of New Orleans is not sitting on its hands, that we're not a potted plant in this regard. We do something every week. Nathaniel Fields has been here for a short period of time and has seen more people deceased than I would want him to have seen if he had told me it was going to happen in advance. We can't have this situation be such that it's us against them. If the mayor, please strike that. If the governor is concerned about the city of New Orleans, all aspects of it, beyond the special events, beyond the Super Bowl, beyond events such as that, need to be taken into account if this city, which is the jewel of Louisiana, is going to continue to work to enhance the quality of life for all. We need the state support, and in a very big way, and a lot of that is going to be financial. Thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you for those comments, Councilmember Green. I would just like to add that we did ask the state for
Yes,
$8.5 million,
Half.
and they spent between $17 to $19 million for 3 months and 150 people. Kevin Ferguson is in support. He could not speak. I think he's left. Bob Sims. And just a reminder, state your name if you're representing anyone, and comments are limited to 2 minutes. Thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. My name's Bob Sims. I'm a French Quarter resident. I've been for 20 years. And I want to just make a few points. The city and the continuum of care providers have done a super job in eliminating all our major encampments. It's very impressive. However, those that didn't want to go to housing are now scattered all over the French Quarter and the downtown area in ones and twosies. They're the hard ones to find housing for because they have many issues. It's not just a house. And so that, to me, is a huge problem at the moment. There is more people in the French Quarter now than there were before the encampments. And they're in ones and twosies. And I think it's true of the downtown area. Councilmember Thomas mentioned about the area around Loyola. It's the same sort of thing that we see. So many of the folks that I see on a daily basis, and I see them every day when I walk out of my house, have got severe mental illness. And there's no place for those folks to go. What happens is EMS and an OPD take them to UMC, and they get treatment for a day, 2 days, maybe 3, and then they're back on the street. We have no, what people call subacute residential mental health facilities, where these people can go for an extended period of time and get their treatment they need to get out of, to help with their mental health concerns. Those people are not ready to be housed. And we've seen that over and over again. I see the same people who have been housed multiple times, and they're back on the street. The Travelers Aid report for April in the French Quarter said that 1 was housed and 10 came back to the street. And there are people who are not ready for housing, so we got to...
Bob, that's your time. Bob, that's your time. Your microphone's off. We got to give everyone 2 minutes. I'm sorry. Thank you. Paula Pete?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Paula Pete, Director of Housing with Family Resources of New Orleans. We are located at 817 North Claiborne. I don't think there's a community that's been more bombarded with the homeless population than us. I have a joint use agreement with DOTD on one of the properties, and Eugene was there. They found a deceased person on the property. And we've had fires underneath the bridge. And we did settle the encampment issue that was on North Claiborne. And we're very happy to have done that very carefully because we love our homeless population. I just want to say, I worked in the community of care for disabled individuals. I'm a parent of a disabled child. And I'm glad to see that you're going to a continuum of care type of system. We specialize in housing. Nate, Joe, Tyra, I go to the office all the time. Look, we find products that's affordable. We have a product now that will house 5 individuals in one location for $165,000. And we can house everybody in the city of New Orleans and everybody homeless in the state of Louisiana. So I just want OCD to know that. And I'd just like to say that what's missing from the committee meeting, and this is, we need an affordable housing development work team. People who know housing, who know where to go to get affordable housing. I understand the continuum of care, which is wonderful, and that we do have individuals who have different needs, and they can't be in the same environment as other people. So we have to really become professionals at what we're doing. And we really need to solve this homeless problem. I've been around it for 40 years. I recommend it. But for those who are on the street, what to do during the daytime, they need to be in programs. They need to be learning something. They need to be getting care, mental health care, so they can become independent. We can change that. We just have to work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pete. Martha? Followed by Charles. I can't read your last name.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to express my deep appreciation to all of you for your deep commitment to providing a home for every New Orleanian and for ending homelessness. And I want to extend a special appreciation to you, Councilwoman Harris, for your vision and your leadership, and also to Mandy for all that she has added to this whole process, and everybody who's worked so hard on this. I'm really proud of what's been accomplished so far. I know that there's so much more to be accomplished, but the fact that we've already housed over 1,100 people toward the goal of 1,500, and it's as of May 31st, is a testament to what we can do when we all work together. And that's all the more astonishing when you consider that the fair market rent for a 1-bedroom apartment is now $12.36 a month, and we're a city where nearly a quarter of the population is below the poverty line. So we have so many people struggling who are falling into homelessness every day, who weren't homeless the night before, and so it's just a constant challenge to do this work, but the work is being done. And on any given night, all of us working together are housing over 3,500 people who were rescued out of homelessness by providing them with rent assistance and case management services. So we look forward to working even more closely on not only getting to goal, but really getting to zero, or as close to zero as we can possibly do. I do want to say that the cuts in Congress to the HUD housing and homelessness budget are, I think, our biggest.
Thank you, Martha. Charles Mendy.
Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for having me. My name is Charles Mendy, originally from West Africa, Gambia, but I've been living in the city of New Orleans for about 30 years. And housing is what I do. I'm meant to be here to serve the community. I've been taking care of battered women and their children, men coming out of prison. I will sit down, I will go to Angola and sit down with them. We have a plan of when they come out, so that I can work with them one-on-one. And also the mentally challenged. So I am one of those that I'm grassroots. I'm on the grounds, I'm hands-on. I just want to say to the community, use us. Paolo and I, we've been collaborating, and also Lionel, for many, many years. And this homelessness situation is our new mission. We are dedicated, we are here. All these organizations that are here, Unity and Nate and all of these guys, we have been letting them know that we're present. Use us. And we are dedicated to make sure that we do what we do best. Housing, we out there on the grounds and work with caseworkers as a team. And also let people that do what they do best, just do it. We'll get those resources. NOLA Detox, there's the Paul that's just open right there on the West Bank. It's empty right now. We need to use those resources and collaborate with them. We are the type of citizens that we go out there and knock at each doors to make sure that to let them know that we're here. So we're here to collaborate with the city and to make sure that we end this homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe, followed by Lonnie.
Joe Herron-Mueller, Unity of Greater New Orleans, Director of Community Engagement, 2475 Canal Street, Suite 300. I wanted to thank the chairwoman, the council, the administration, all the partners who have worked together clutch on this plan, and not just the plan itself, but everything that's gone into testing this out and putting this into effect. It has saved the lives of hundreds, if not thousands, of people across our community, and with the promise of more to come. And it is a very complex problem that has stymied lots of communities, but we have not been deterred, and I really appreciate that. There's a deep commitment to finding new resources, and I see that here among the people who are gathered, to ask probing questions to make sure that as we move forward, we are effective, refining our approaches, and bringing with us along the way people with lived experience and their expertise and the expertise of the providers across our city. I really want to highlight the degree to which optimizing shelter flow is the linchpin of this plan, around which much of the other work pivots. As a continuum of care, Unity organizes not only shelter for and housing resources for people who are single adults, but also for families experiencing homelessness, youth experiencing homelessness, people fleeing domestic violence. We have seen, particularly in our work with families, that problem solving has been extraordinarily effective at optimizing shelter flow, at preventing more people from entering into shelter, and then when we have the rapid rehousing resources available, that we're getting those folks into place. And we're glad to see that this plan encompasses all of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Joe, thank you for your advocacy in Baton Rouge. Lonnie?
Thank you, council members. Madam Chair, on behalf of Odyssey House, we'd like to extend sincere condolences for your loss. We also want to thank you for the opportunity for partnership and continued trust that you placed in us as the operators of the City Low Barrier Shelter. We'd like to offer support, of course, for this initiative, which is clearly city-led and appears to be both organic and sustainable, and so we're very excited to offer support. Over the last year, Odyssey House has been intentional about engaging individuals who are in our shelter in a continuum of services, and prioritizing those who have been engaged as a guest at the shelter for more than a year. Relative to the shelter itself, we have juggled a litany of maintenance issues that we've raised to the city's attention, and we appreciate the desire to do more and be more efficient and expedient in addressing those issues in the future, as we do have concern that they impact the quality of service that we're able to provide, but we, of course, always appreciate the commitment of this council, and particularly yourself, Councilmember Harris. We know that we have been grateful to host you at the Low Barrier Shelter numerous times, and we appreciate you getting a firsthand glimpse on a recurring basis of the improvements that have been made. And we also want you to be aware that we have hosted the Department of Health on numerous occasions, members of the governor's team, as well as Representative Knox and House Speaker Philip deVilliers. And so we, of course, welcome the opportunity to host any of the council members at the shelter at any particular time to give you a firsthand glimpse of the improved operational flow and state of the conditions in the shelter. I did want to touch on one thing. I know that serious mental illness continues to come up in conversation, and it's completely appropriate. It's important that we recognize the limitations that are currently in place from a funding perspective. We do not have subacute levels of care in Louisiana for individuals with chronic and persistent serious mental illness. This is a conversation that requires additional resources from both the state and federal level, and that is a conversation.
Thank you. Renee? Followed by Dr. Vigno.
Hold my notes, sorry. Thank y'all. Good afternoon. Renee Blanche, Ozanam Inn. I'm just going to piggyback on some of the comments that, first of all, we were very involved in the process of this presentation, and we were very pleased to be a part of it. To Councilmember Thomas's comments about funding, we are one of the biggest shelters in the city, yet we get very little funding from the city. We are appreciative of what we get, but it's less than a quarter of our budget, and we are expected to do a whole lot for the city. We're happy to be partners. We're grateful to be partners, but we have ongoing structural issues, maintenance issues, and that's just not the day-to-day expenses that we have just having a 156-bed shelter. Aside from that, Councilmember Green mentioned something about this being a state problem. It very much is. We have hospitals and mental hospitals, other hospitals and other facilities that drop people at our shelter from outside of New Orleans on a weekly, almost daily basis. And then regular hospitals within not just Orleans Parish, but Jefferson Parish as well, dump patients at our facility without notifying us. We are not a medical facility. We have we don't have medical staff on site, so we are constantly having to send people back in an ambulance to hospitals because we cannot take care of them, and they are being dumped on us on a constant basis, and that's really a very big issue for us. And so just, as everybody said, funding, but it's not just city, it's also state. It's very much of a state issue. We've had you at our facility as well, and Councilmember Knox asked us particularly if we had people coming from outside of the city, and we 100% do on an ongoing basis. So thank you all again. Thank you, Mandy. Thank you, Nate. Thank you, everybody in this room who's been a part of this process.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
May I comment on that, please?
Of course.
I want to encourage the members of the media, present and not present, who are watching, to listen to what was just said. We have talked about that so often, about people being brought to the city of New Orleans because there aren't resources in other places, and the state has refused to assist in providing those resources. We even have another parish which houses its homeless individuals in Orleans Parish. At the end of the day, that has to end. At least the rhetoric relative to the city of New Orleans and what we're not doing because everybody else is so much greater than us has to end. That is a story, Ms. Casacove. That is a story, members of the media who are watching. The city of New Orleans will never be able to catch up to the situations that involve us right now if we're going to continually be the place that gets, I hate to use the word dumped on because I'm not talking about the people, but if we get dumped on by the state in terms of the rhetoric that is used, and then we get imposed upon by those who are outside the state outside the city with no limit, we'll never be able to catch up. I emphasize again that I see it on a regular basis. Very hardworking members of the New Orleans community, of the city government, and of other entities that are doing good work. But that was I didn't even have to pull that out. That was very eye-opening. I want the media to look at what was just said and ask about numbers. You ask about numbers when the city of New Orleans is involved with something. Let's ask about numbers as to how many people are being brought here from other places because no resources are provided anywhere else in the state of Louisiana, such as we provide here in New Orleans. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Green. And we know that the Jefferson Parish City Council specifically said that they did not want to have a homeless shelter in Jefferson Parish, and that was a vote, I think that was earlier this year.
Yes.
Dr. Jennifer Vigno, followed by Dr. Vaughn.
Thank you all. I just want to echo my thanks to everybody that participated in this whole process. Obviously there have been giants working on homelessness in our community for the last several decades. And what this process has represented is a real synergy that I certainly, in my 20 years of seeing it from the health side, have not really seen before. And I think that that's because, in a way, we are using a public health approach at the core of this. You know, focusing on the encampments as the immediate first steps for a rejuvenated city approach is triage, because we know that any amount of homelessness that you spend outside significantly increases your mortality. So the camps themselves, and Dr. Vaughn's going to talk about what our research has showed, when you live in a camp, your risk of severe injury, illness, and death is incredibly high. And so by starting there, we have reduced mortality, and we've reduced the cost not only to society, but to our healthcare system and our public safety. And I just want to say, from the health side, yes, we all know that several of the individuals, particularly the ones that remain on the street now, since we have housed 1,100, have significant medical and mental health issues that make it very, very, very difficult to find housing anywhere, even with supports. We have done a lot from this administration and council to support things on the front end, like MCIU and respite and LEAD and EMS and sobering centers and our opioid money. But what we need to do, and what we are actively working on, is to get the healthcare system to respond to meet the needs. We can get folks to a facility, but Renee, you're absolutely right. When they leave that facility, they don't leave necessarily with what they need. So I just want to make sure everybody knows that we are working on that response as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vagno. Dr. Vaughn, followed by Michael Williamson.
So hello and good afternoon. I would like to just echo a lot of what our many other partners have mentioned today, is that we're just so thankful for this ecosystem. We see that it works, we see that it's effective, and you need all the specific disciplines involved to really make this work. As we looked at the data and tried to look at the public health approach and what that impact has had on this system and this plan, we've seen that with the first two encampments in the decommissioning process, and really that specific approach to housing first, that it really doesn't just impact the individuals that are housed, but also that larger community. We're seeing that medical calls, so that's our EMS teams that are able to kind of be lessen with that burden, that are able to go out and, you know, serve the community in a different way as well. In addition, we're seeing that the medical calls, in addition to the trauma calls that are also happening and occurring, are also being decreased as well. So it's not just the individuals that are able to be positively impacted, but also those in the community that also are able to thrive and be successful as well. So just a shout out to the system, to this plan, and thank you to all the partners involved that are able to make this work.
Thank you for your work. Michael Williamson.
Good afternoon. So first of all, let me thank everybody for the opportunity to join you today, and more importantly, for everybody here in the room and those not that are part of the critical work to end unsheltered homelessness in New Orleans. I'm Michael Williamson. I serve as President and CEO of United Way of Southeast Louisiana, where we believe every person deserves the opportunity to be healthy, safe, and financially secure, and that starts with a place called home. That belief is what drives our work at United Way, and that's why we're so proud to partner with Home for Good initiatives, bold, focused, and deeply collaborative effort to end unsheltered homeless in our city once and for all. And what you heard today is it's working. Together with the city and our nonprofit partners, Home for Good has already housed more than 1,100 individuals, as you've heard so far, and closed 8 major encampments, putting us more than 75% of our way to the shared goal of housing 1,500 people living outdoors by the end of 2025. Now, that kind of impact doesn't happen by accident. It happens when people come together with a clear plan, a shared sense of urgency, and a deep belief in what is possible. Just a few weeks ago, our team at United Way supported the rehousing of 5 people from the city's low barrier shelter into permanent housing in one single day. I'm going to say that one more time. 5 people rehoused in just a single day. And here's why that matters. Every time someone exits a shelter bed, it leaves a space open for someone else on the street to come inside. That's one less person sleeping under an overpass, one more person being connected to the care and stability that they need. This is a model that's fast, focused, and it's the most cost-effective way to end homelessness by connecting people to housing, keeping public spaces safe and clean, and making the most of limited resources. So I'm just going to cut to the chase and say our role at United Way is is very clear. We keep doing what we do best and what we do most, which is convening partners, joining partners, leveraging resources, investing in proven solutions, and pushing for systems change, because no one should ever have to sleep on the street. So thank you for this partnership, your leadership. Madam Council.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you for your friendship and your partnership. Councilmember Thomas, Councilmember Green, any closing comments on this issue?
I found this to be a very valuable meeting, and I am so pleased that the Ozanam Inn is here today. There are some times that I want to be redundant for a reason. I know the Ozanam Inn has numbers. I'm asking the media to ask questions.
Thank you, Councilmember Green. And I want to thank every single partner who has partnered with the city to establish this fantastic program, Home for Good, NewOrleans.org. You can donate online. Every $5 counts, every $500 counts, every $5,000 counts. But we can all contribute to this. I can't thank enough Unity, our Office of Homelessness Strategies and Services, New Orleans and Company, United Way, and Ganoff, and Dr. Avegna really, and Mandy for all of your work and commitment to this effort. And I would be remiss if I did not shout out my Chief of Staff, Allison Port, who has been the heart and soul of this effort. So thank you all. Anita, will you call the next item?
For the record, there were 2 online comments that we can just add to the record.
I appreciate that.
Next item is the Mobile Crisis Intervention Unit 2-year anniversary update. Presenters are Benjamin Winger, the MCIU Program Coordinator for the City Health Department. We got Jade Kabawashi with Community Advisory Board President, and Catherine Bergenstock, MCIU Community Advisory Board Secretary.
Good afternoon, everyone. My
Good
name is
afternoon.
Benjamin Winger, and I'm here to present MCIU. I am the clinical coordinator for an MCIU program, and I'm here with 2 of our officers from the Community Advisory Board. Okay? Let's see. There we go. Let me make sure I got this right. I'm gonna present with you for a moment. All right, it's been 2 years since the Mobile Crisis Unit began in June 1st, 2023. And now it's time to let you guys know what we've been doing out there. First, I'll let you know exactly who we are. The MCIU, or New Orleans Mobile Crisis Intervention Unit, is actually a non-law enforcement team of mental health professionals who respond to nonviolent and weaponless mental health calls through 911. The goal of the MCIU is to reduce the number of behavioral health crises traditionally responded to by NOPD and other first responders. And it's also to increase the number of individuals whose crises are resolved through the 911 system and follow-ups in the most person-centered, least restrictive possible way. We also goal is to provide crisis response services and equitably. Also to reduce the use of force or punitive enforcement action, like citations or arrests, that can result during a 911 response. And finally, to reduce the frequency of behavioral health crises calls by or about the same individuals. So the calls that are diverted to the MCIU should further relieve the burden on police and other first responders and subsequently reduce recidivism by providing clinicians and technicians to intervene and deal with complex mental health and social needs. MCIU is basically the tip of the spear when it comes down to mental health crisis in the 911 system. Who are MCIU first responders? Who are they? Well, MCIU response teams respond in teams of 2 crisis workers per van. The crisis workers can be master's level without license, bachelor levels, or certified peer support specialists. Each shift is supervised by a lead technician and fully licensed mental health professional. The MCIU shifts work in 2 teams in the morning, 3 to 4 teams during the day and early evening, 2 teams in the late evening, and 1 team overnight. And plus, we have at least 1 disaster response and recovery team that works 12-hour shifts in case of a natural disaster or something like that. These are real, true first responders, and they do not leave. They don't evacuate. They respond just as other first responders do. Okay, the integration of MCIU into the 911 system or the emergency response system. NOHD and MCIU personnel cross-train with OPCD, NOPD CIT, and sometimes with EMS within an established protocol engagement. And let me just say that I've trained with NOPD and Taisha, and who is the crisis unit, mobile crisis unit director. We were both in the same class, and it really makes a difference in knowing how to respond to these calls and interact with other responders. Calls to 911 are screened and classified as a mental health emergency. 911 operators ask specific questions. These questions are like exhibiting violent behavior. Is the person exhibiting violent behavior? Are weapons present? Is there individual in imminent danger or to themselves or others? And is the person experiencing a medical emergency? Based on those responses, will the MCIU, will the call taker send that call to the appropriate responder? Not all the time do you get MCIU, but sometimes, like if you ask, we get a lot of calls from third parties, and sometimes they don't know if they're carrying a weapon or not. So to be on the safe side, you may get the police and not MCIU at first, but the police can call it, any first responder can call us once they get on the scene and scene safety has been established. All right, this is the data. We do have a dashboard that's on the New Orleans Health Department or NOLA.gov website. This dashboard was built together with Vera and Microsoft donations, and anyone has access to this data. And just looking at the data, we can see that since we started to May of 31st, there's been over 18,000 74 mental health calls for service. MCIU took 6,751 of those calls, and they were in the face of over 4,941 people or recipients of care. The response time is less than 8 minutes, and you can see there the total MCIU time on the scene. There's also demographics. Our population is mostly a black and brown population, and it reflects by race the people who are being seen and treated. And might I add, this is also reflective of NOPD CIT data as well in the treatment and care of our citizens here in New Orleans. We do look at the data by police districts, and you can see the data since to date, the year to date, we have received over 3,700 calls, and but in the beginning, before we started, OPCD from April 2018 through June 2021, excuse me, stated that 911 call center indicated that about 2,920 or almost 3,000 calls per or calls per year, or about 8 calls per day, could have been diverted to the New Orleans MCIU if we had one back then. Today, what we found is that we have doubled that. We're doing about 10 calls a day, but we are almost at 3,700 calls. And if you break it down by the districts, you can see your police districts, and you all know your police districts in your wards. You can see that that the 6th district and the 7th district are the ones that are that we respond to the most. Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you the MCIU Community Advisory Board. This board was a creation of the New Orleans Health Department and VERA. The New Orleans, in partnership with VERA. In June of 2024, exactly 1 year after the launch of the Mobile Crisis Intervention Unit, the New Orleans Parish MCIU Community Advisory Board was formally established in alignment with the city's contract. The Health Department viewed the CAB as a vital platform through which community members can voice their needs and concerns and expectations regarding mental health and the crisis response services. The CAB plays a critical role in ensuring transparency and accountability in the performance of the MCIU, particularly as the unit continues to evolve within the city's broader emergency response system. We also believe that the CAB's ability to speak truth to power is a foundational element of its mission. That is why this diverse and committed body is here today. The board is made up of 9 members, and they have their own self-governing charter, and they're a diverse group of individuals. We have Boys Town, we have clinical psychologists, we have even Unity and other community organizations that are on our board, including people with lived experience that did over 20 years in Angola and is now working with children. So we have a very diverse and voting members We also have non-voting members, which I am a member. The Health Department is a member, me and Travers. Also, we have NOPD. Sergeant Isaac is the CIT director for NOPD. We have EMS that are also involved. We have OPCD, and we also have the fire department, Chief Wanda. She's also a part of our and Nate, of course. Nate is definitely a part. We work together, and we have spirited conversations sometimes, and we work things out, and I'm very proud of them for that. It is with great pleasure that I now present to you the City Council, the New Orleans, the MCIU Community Advisory Board. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ben, for that introduction. My name is Dr. Jade Kobayashi. I am the chair of the Community Advisory Board for the MCIU. I'm just here today to do a little introduction and to give an idea of what we have planned for the next year or so. So just to give you all some information about what community advisory boards are, who we are. So we're a set of volunteers and community members who all have some similarities to one another that allows us to understand what our community partners and our first responders need, as well as what the public needs in a mobile crisis response. VERA, the Institute of Justice, sponsored the creation of that with RHD, and we've been meeting since early 2024. I would say that 2024 was really our infancy. Now we are kind of walking, and we're very interested in running. Just to give you an idea of what our day-to-day looks like, we meet weekly, or as often as the 9 of us can get quorum. We discuss ongoing efforts to disseminate information about the MCIU and how to access that service to the public. We have voting power to request changes from RHD, from the MCIU, and we also view ourselves as sort of a listening ear for public problems and as they're ongoing. I'm going to talk a little bit about the 3 areas that we work through. So the first one is education and outreach. So at the national level, there are a number of other CABs that support communities in different cities across the country. We've really found that in terms of mental health response, CABs can help the public be more safe in terms of how they request 911, what information they give to responders, and how they understand the dispatch process to really work. So we view ourselves as educators. We've attended over 40 public health events in the city since our inception. We have some very familiar faces in the crowd, and we hope to become more recognizable, that folks can really approach us and give us their feedback. And again, we can really inform constituents in the community about how to refer to 911, how to request MCIU services. We're also very interested in research, data collection, and information dissemination. So once again, at the national level, there seems to be a lot of interest in what CABs can do to help support mobile crisis response. It's sort of well known at the national level, again, that there is some hesitancy and reluctance to contact 911 about mental health responses. We don't seem to have that hesitancy for other problems, such as a medical emergency or a car accident or something like that. And so we would really like the public to feel comfortable making 911 referrals to MCIU. So we want to take some of the data that has been collected that Ben has already shown, translate that for the public, and use other avenues such as partnerships with research agencies to better understand this issue. And finally, the MCIU CAB also is interested in its own self-study. So while CABs are growing across the country, and particularly in response to mental health crises, we're still interested in understanding what makes this sustainable, why all of us have continued to come to meetings every week and volunteer our time, energy, and skills, and how we can continue to make this robust for the city. What we hope to see in the data is more utilization of the services, better triage, better assignment to hospitals, non-hospital response, or just that the public seems to trust MCIU more. And finally, I just want to give some information about how to contact us and some of our future plans. So each of the 3 areas is ongoing in development. We would hope to present, hopefully at our next public meeting, a calendar of events run by the MCIU CAB. That would be the main way for the public to reach us. However, we're very available by email to meet one-on-one. We're at tabling events and public events all across the city all year long, and again, have become familiar faces in those spaces. We collect a lot of anecdotal stories. We also have anonymous survey methods available to us as well. So there are a number of ways to get us that information, and we hope to continue to translate that and disseminate that to create more progress for the MCIU and the city. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Councilmember Thomas. I think y'all are finished?
I just want to add one thing. This is MCIU as a whole, as a part of the emergency response system, and we intend to be the 5th branch of the emergency response system, and we also intend. We are looking at ways and to be more sustainable in the future. We are basically 2 years old, and we are in this to win this and to help this city.
Well, thank you very much. I know that we've referred often to you for people who are calling with crises, and so we've said reach out to the Mobile Crisis Intervention Unit. Councilmember Thomas.
No, really just an opportunity to thank you for your presentation, but as someone who's been there, I've on the scene, met with your staff, seen the people who staff MCIU at work, I can track the 2-year reduction in highlights that we have with the overall atmosphere of public safety in this community with the work that your unit has done. Now, resource and sustainability, there are a whole lot of other factors that come into play, but if nothing else, the investment has been tremendous. The people work hard, they're underpaid, and though people in the law enforcement and criminal justice system will get credit for some of the success, it doesn't happen without the conversations, the intervention, and the prevention that comes from that unit. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Green.
Thank you. And when I talk about the reduction in crime in the city, I like to give recognition to everyone. It's not just the it's not just the law enforcement community. You all are an example. And I do go to community meetings and I tell people about you, just as I tell them about the Office of Homeless Services and Strategy, new initiatives on the part of the city that work. You all, in many respects, certainly protect those who are experiencing a crisis at the time and also their family members. But in some respects, you all help to insulate the law enforcement community from something that would be very challenging if you weren't there. And they can speak for themselves, certainly the members of the law enforcement community, our first responders. But I have a funny feeling that if you talk to some of them in an official manner, they'll say they appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all, to call you, to have family members know that they can also call you in addition to the police. Maybe that's one reason that our law enforcement officers haven't had to use their weapons as often as in the past, and less often than even surrounding parishes. So thank you all for the work that you do. It's a very important work, and when I combine your work, and as I mentioned, all the other organizations that some of them are new, what we provided in terms of funding, what the health department is doing that's new, there's a lot of reasons that the citizens of our city feel safer. And that's been shown in the UNO Quality of Life poll. Crime is not the absolute top heading in terms of what they see as concerns in the city. One of them may be, or one of them is, the Mobile Crisis Intervention Unit because of what you do. So thank you for the work that you do. And I celebrate with you these 2 years. You're a very cool and calm presenter. You should be celebrating these 2 great years with all those numbers. So congratulations to all. And to the council, Madam Chair and Councilman Thomas and the other members who aren't here, it's 2 years old because we were deliberate about creating it. And it has made a tremendous difference in our city. So thank you to everyone here who continues to show concern for our citizens and to those who provide the resources and the time that are making our city safer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Green. I also want to just say a heartfelt thank you. I mean, serving all these folks in the 2-year time period that you have been in existence is amazing. And I know for a fact that there have been some interventions that have work to de-escalate situations that could have otherwise turned out to be really horrific. So thank you for all the work you do. I'm proud of this council for funding this effort. I'm proud of Dr. Wagner once again for founding this effort of the MCIU. And I have a constituent who I'm putting you directly in touch with who does not believe that this works. I'm sending her this dashboard as soon as I get back to my desk so she can see the interventions that have taken place. So thank you so much for your work. And with that, well, we don't have a quorum, but I will move to adjourn.
Second, always.
All right. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you for all your work.
Thank you.